This past week, I heard the most horrific story, and I've been thinking about the whole week. So I wanted to share with you uh, the story of my friend. And then I would like to do something very unusual. And basically, I'm making a pep talk. It's a pep talk. Usually, I make pep talks for all of you, for like the general public of Jewish moms. And this is going to be a pep talk just for my friend who's going through a really, really, really hard time. So basically, my friend, she lives in Los Angeles. Her husband is a very successful lawyer, and they got married about 15 years ago. They're like a good from Orthodox family, and like the husband, would go 3 times a day to Minyan and would learn Torah regularly. He was Kaveh team, and so then about a year ago. So by the way, my friend has 8 children. B'li Ayin Hara. The oldest was just bar mitzvah. So about a year ago, then my friend noticed some changes in her husband. The husband started acting strangely and stopped being religious, to the extent that even this past Passover, he was like eating bread and just totally was not observant at all anymore. Stopped keeping Shabbat, and she noticed like his behavior changed. He became like sort of critical and more difficult than he had been in the past. And so then a few months ago, my friend had had a horrific discovery. She realized that her husband had been having an affair for about a year with a woman from his office, with a woman who's not Jewish, in fact, an African American woman who worked in the office, and he. And even after she found out, then he wanted to stay with this woman, with his girlfriend, and they this past like a few weeks ago, they finally got divorced. It's a terrible story. So so what I wanted to talk about is just like at this moment, I think that that my friend, it looks on the face of things like my friend, like the husband, like this husband who's a creep, who I think should be sitting in prison for what he's done. Mamash, like you leave, a wife with like a loyal, devoted, amazing wife with 8 children, and also he doesn't like he's giving them very little money for support. No, even though he's making a huge sums of money. He's barely supporting his wife and his children. This past week for Shabbat, like they literally did not have any money in their bank account. I think like last Tuesday she told me that she had $40 in her bank account. So I think that he should be sitting in prison. But the thing is, it looks on the face of things like he sort of did this horrible thing, and now he's winning. Like he has all this. He has all this money. He has hundreds of thousands of dollars in savings and in salary, and he has the beautiful young girlfriend, and he's going on expensive vacations with her, and he's living the good life. And there she is. She's stuck at home with 8 kids under the age of 14. The oldest was just bar mitzvah, and doesn't have money for Shabbos. And she was always a stay-at-home mom. So how's she possibly going to support, pay day school education, day school tuition, and support even before that, pay for food, electricity, for all basic needs, clothing for her children. It's as though like he's like winning and she's like this. It's as though she's like this in this terrible position. As though he's won and she's lost. Okay, so what I want to say now, I'm going to speak directly to my friend. So as you know, there's a woman. I'm saying to my friend, she knows. There's a woman in my community, and there was a terrible story, a similar story, in fact, about 12 years ago in my community. There was a rabbi who was married with many children. Let's say over a dozen children, and this husband left this rabbi left his wife for a younger woman, and So I've seen basically this happened 12 years ago, and they got actually divorced 10 years ago. And I wanted to just talk with you about what I've seen, what's happened to my friend over those years. Because my friend, I think, was in a very similar position to you. Okay, 12 years ago, and what 12 years ago I see has happened to her, and I think it will give you some chizuk, I hope. So my friend, basically, she was in the same situation as you. Her husband was not giving her any money, and she was broke, and she had over a dozen children to support, and she was just so broken. She'd been with this person since she was 18 years old. She had been incredibly devoted to him, and just given her whole life to being a stay-home mother and supporting her husband and supporting her kids, and but I want to tell you what happened. So over the years, Baruch Hashem, actually, she ended up marrying a wonderful person, and now she's very very happily married, Baruch Hashem. But that's not the point of what I want to say, because not everyone who divorces gets married again. But even though I do bless you that you'll find your true zivug, that Bezat Hashem you should get married again. But what I want to say is that initially what happens is what I saw happen with my friend, the Rebbitzin, is that her kids were angry at the father for leaving, and they ended up taking it a bit out on the mother, a lot on the mother. She was the one who was there. The father wasn't around. He was off doing whatever with his young girlfriend, who became his wife. But but he was but she was but she was there. So the kids took out their anger at the father on her. So it wasn't easy. But what I see now 10 years later is this woman. She has so much nachas. She has the kids. She's stuck with her kids. She's there. She raised them. She has now over a dozen kids who are so loyal to her, and they love her, and she loves them, and she has such a tremendous relationship with them, and they've been through hell, and they survived, and they're such a close family. And now, pretty much every month, I think that she has a new grandchild that's born to this woman. She has just off the charts nachas, and the husband who left her, he has maybe a teensy bit of connection with the children, but almost nothing. So it's like his kids, I don't think will ever forgive him for what he's done. And he's like, on like a nachas chart, it's like 0. Not 0, maybe he's got like a 2 or 3, as opposed to her, 3 trillion on the nachas chart. Okay? Not to mention like what's happening in Shemayim in terms of how in Shemayim these people's lives are perceived. The husband who abandoned his wife of over 30 years, and with over a dozen children, versus what she's done and stood with her kids and raised them up to be observant Jews, and being a devoted mother, and like in Hashem's eyes, like he's like again, he's like a negative 3 trillion. She's a positive, she's like a tzaddikus. She's an amazing person, and in my eyes, and also I'm sure in Hashem's eyes. So I want to bless you just to remember like now it looks like your husband, he's got all the money in his bank account, and he's got the beautiful girlfriend, he's got the fancy car and the fancy vacations, and you're like struggling to make Shabbos, and with a house full of little kids who are asking, where's Abba? But in a few years from now, I think you're going to look back and you're going to see who's the real winner in this situation. Another thing I want to say, just based on what I've seen with my friend, the Rebbitzin. So I used to go to classes when my friend was still married, my Rebbitzin friend. I used to go to, she teaches a lot. She's a popular teacher. And I used to go to her classes. She gave like advice on raising kids, and, advice, just general advice and wisdom for life, and advice on marriage. And I remember thinking at the time, I would go to her classes, and I remember that they sort of left me cold, because I would think, what can I really learn from her? Look at her. She's got the perfect life. Look at her. She's got these over a dozen kids. She's got, this wonderful marriage, wonderful home. She's an inspiration to everyone. She's always happy, always calm. Great life. She's like the inspiration. She's like the role model for the entire neighborhood. Okay? And I felt in a way like I couldn't really, I remember I got advice from her a few times, and I was like, but like she doesn't know anything about like the struggles that I'm going through. Like, I have difficulties. I have struggles. It's not easy for me. It's not easy for me being a mom. It's not easy for me taking care of the things I have to take care of. I have my own challenges. What does she know about challenges? She doesn't have any challenges in her life. But now today, like 12 years later, she's such an inspiration to me. She's a person who went through hell. And mamash, it took her like a few years. It was not easy. I saw her go through hell, and she went through hell. Like, it was a horrific, terrible, terrible thing that she went through for several years. But to look at her now, how much wiser she is, like how wise she is, and also like how much, I know like now, like when I get advice from her, I get advice from her just about like, dealing with challenges or emunah or anything, and she about raising kids, and she is just an inspiration to me because I know she's been through that. She's been through that. She is so wise. I can get so much wisdom from her. She's just a different person. She's a person who now, like, also, like, now she specifically reaches out to people. She runs, like, support groups, this Rebbitzin. She runs support groups for people who've been through real challenges in their lives, people who are really struggling, and she can really give them chizuk because of where she's been, because she's been through it. If they're going through hell, she's been through 10 times the hell that they've been through when her husband left, you know? So it reminds me of something that I heard this week from a very wise woman. Her name is Shoshana Savion, and she was explaining that that every person, every soul, before it descends to the world, every soul chooses which life to live, which body to enter, along with what life's challenge. But she doesn't call it a life's challenge. She explains it that every life, every person, every neshama has its curriculum. It's curriculum for life. Okay, and one's curriculum is overcoming a tendency towards anger. One's curriculum is overcoming a tendency towards, I don't know, depression. And so my friend's curriculum was obviously, it was overcoming, was undergoing, something that was so phenomenally humiliating. I mean, all of Jerusalem, all of Nachlaot, and all of Jerusalem was talking about this, and the husband, and there were also criminal charges against him, or at least criminal accusations against him, and like from going from the esteemed rabbi and the esteemed rebbitzin to being like, oh my God, what's going? And he left her with this younger woman, blah, blah, blah. And to see like that her soul, her neshama wanted that because it made her so much more wise and so much more person who could give true chizuk to people who are struggling, true chizuk to people who are going through a really, really hard time. People are going through hell. She knows now exactly to say to get them through to the other side where she is now. And I want to bless you, my dear friend living in LA. You know who you are, and I want to bless you. You should look back in 10 years and say, that curriculum, it was not easy. I went through hell. I did go through hell. But I know. My soul chose that curriculum, and now I know why. 10 years later, I know why my soul craved that curriculum. I can see what I've learned, what I've gained, how much greater of a person I am now. So I wanna bless my friend with only Bezrat Hashem from now on. With so much nachas from your children. You should see them grow up. You should see them marry. You should become a grandmother. You should have so much nachas from your children. You raise your children to Torah, Chupan, Masim Tovim. You have so much nachas from them. But by being raised by such an amazing mother like you are, that they should grow up and grow and walk in your footsteps. And I want to just say a blessing to everyone else. If any of you are also listening, any other Jewish moms are also listening to this right now. I wanna just remind you, okay? I wanna have a show of hands here. Okay, does any of you have an imperfect husband? Okay, I wanna see a show of hands. Imperfect husband, any of you? Okay. But tell me something. Is your husband loyal to you? Yeah. Is your husband? Do you have a husband? Does this imperfect husband? Does he sit at the head of your Shabbat table every week? Yeah. So I suggest that to thank Hashem for that, to appreciate that, because not every Jewish mom does. Okay, I want to bless all of you Jewish moms with an amazing, amazing week. Kol tov.